Well, this is a little bit of a follow-up episode with Chris because we'd mentioned it on our previous episode that we'd done going through the shorts and using those as ads and how we target a certain audience. And it came up with the data side of things. There's been a couple of policy changes when it comes to the data or the targeting that goes on through the Meta suite of things. We want to talk about audiences and the cleanliness of data and where you can get data from. It's just... I do think that it's really important to keep this topic top of mind because I don't believe that it's where real estate is going, as I say on the episode, or Chris says, and I like this. It's actually where real estate is and where it's been. And we really need to get very conscious with this topic of the cleanliness of your data and what to do with the data once you've got that data and how to acquire more data. And then how do we turn it into audiences that ultimately we can target? Again, it is a very important conversation. It may bore some people to death, but it's really important for those that are looking for longevity in this industry. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Well, data seems to be a troublesome issue, Chris. Like it seems to be ever evolving. And I think it's one thing that's taken for granted when it comes to the way that people are building their real estate basis. And what I mean, so we were doing, our last episode was on shorts and then we came up with the sequence of how do we put all that together. And I sort of said, well, you got to kind of start off with data because you need at least an audience of 1,000 people in order to target through the Meta suite, right?
Yep.
So my question was to you there was, well, what if I don't have 1,000 and I've only got 150 on my database or 250 on my database? What else do I put in there? And then it came up with all these new restrictions that there are and all this different stuff. So I think that the one thing that is undervalued within our industry, one of the episodes that we had on Rethink Real Estate was Rachel Ashley, who got 160 groups of people through the door. You're doing auctions. She could manage to get everybody's contact information. And out of that, 50% of those people were buyers or sellers looking to sell in the near future that were unrepresented and didn't have their agent with them. So therefore, she increased her database by almost, call it 80 people, right, of raw information, raw data that gave her phone numbers. And a lot of them gave her email addresses when she was asking for them as well. That right there is absolute gold. When you consider the way that you've got to get data anywhere else in order to increase your database, that right there, whilst it sounds really traditional and a lot of people won't stand at the front door of an open house, they don't appreciate how hard that is because there's some really distinct parameters at this point that you've got to go through with targeting people and all that stuff.
100%. And credit to Rachel and everything she did with that campaign. And a lot of our Harcourts agents that they run with their campaigns, they all grab information like that. I think, man, I've been in this game way too long now. I say 14, almost 15 years ago when I was holding open houses for our team, for our real estate team back in the day. That was the number one way I thought everyone ran. I ran every single person who came in our open houses. I was like, hey, I need to get your first name, last name, email address, phone number. Like, I just thought that was normal because we were trying to build our database as well. And I didn't know any different. Our team always ran like that. And so our team was a Remax team and they had a database that was just massive. I think it was 36,000 people in their database.
Wow. Jeez,
and
that's good.
It's way too much, probably.
No, but that's I don't know if is there too much now? Like that's a good question.
There's probably people who have bought and sold. I mean, at the time, for the amount of money that we were running ads and our bandwidth and everything like that, we weren't keeping up with 36,000 people. So one of the main roles that they brought me in for was to clean that database. That was literally like my number one job description was figure out which leads in this database are good and which ones are bad and who has the right contact information still and everything like that. But when I went to the open houses and I learned how they were collecting the data, I was like, oh, this is just normal. And so I was like, this is how you're supposed to run open houses. You're supposed to just, and again, I'd never been to an open house at that point in my career. I think I was, 19 or 20 or something, maybe 22. And so I was going into these houses and I was just like, oh, this is my first time at an open house. And so I just thought this was how you ran. But every single person that we pulled in, we put them directly in our database on Mondays. And we started then delivering them either ads at that point back in the day, or we started reaching out to them via phone and email at that point. And so I thought that was just kind of the normal way to do it. But then when I started learning more and more about real estate and getting introduced to a lot more agents, they don't focus on data as much as my team was at the time. And I think that is a detriment to a lot of real estate businesses. businesses out there because, again, like you said, this is the easiest, not easiest, but this is the most foolproof way to get data. So if you're a new agent out there or you're even a seasoned agent, I would say getting your first party data through your open houses is the number one way that you can get data for advertising, for Facebook ads or meta ads or anything like that. Now we could talk about all the other different ways that you can get ads, data for your ads that you're trying to run out there. And that's anything from running on Facebook's platforms for using their demographic, which Ben alluded to. A lot of that is changing specifically for your demographics and your targeting. So
what could you used to do? Give me an idea that when this first started, like give me an idea what you used to do. And no, because I want to give people a bit of scope on this because I'm actually sure, like we just had a conversation before we started. It's like you can't target via zip code anymore. And people are going to go, oh, that's really restricting. But what you used to be able, you could probably target an individual.
Anybody.
Right?
So anybody. So you could. So I had this fun thing. I spoke a long time ago at a convention in New York, and a real estate convention in New York, and I spoke there, and I had a challenge for everybody. I was sitting on a panel, and I was like, and they just didn't believe this. I mean, this was 10 years ago. They didn't believe on the power of Facebook ads at the time. I was kind of getting skepticism from everybody in the room, and how crazy it was. And I was like, guys, I have $50 right now in my account. I had like a $50 free thing, and I was like, I will target everybody in this room, like every single person in this room. And if you see the ad tomorrow when you're at the convention, come up to me, buy me a drink. I had more drinks than anybody else, and I was turning down drinks. And if Ben knows me, I don't turn down drinks. And so it was hilarious because I literally all I did was I dropped a pin on the convention and it said anybody who's been inside of the Marriott, whatever it was, Times Square, the Marriott there, and it was literally just pandemonium. Everyone was like, I saw your ad. And I was like, 100% you saw my ad. Like that's how easy it is. And that's how simple it is. You used to be able to target down to a granular specific person or type of demographic. So for example, from a real estate perspective, we used to go all the way down to where they work. And that was so super big for us. So I used to run ads for anybody who recently moved into San Diego and is working for Scripps Hospital. Or any of the biotech companies. So we started listing all the biotech companies there because we know if they're transferring into the business or transferring into the location and they have a job with one of the biotech companies, they probably have enough money to buy in that area. And so that was kind of our food for thought from that process. And we were able to just turn over leads at that point. I was turning over so many leads that I was just passing them out to agents that I knew in the area.
So now what are the restrictions? What do they start to restrict and how have we gotten to, and where have we gotten to now, so to speak?
Yeah, so the equal opportunity housing laws and everything that kind of came through that. So what they started to deem was that people were running housing ads to only high net worth individuals who could afford these homes, investors and stuff like that. And so they just determined that they were not giving an equal opportunity to anybody who is in those neighborhoods to buy those properties, which I don't agree with. In my opinion, I think you can run an ad inside of a Rolex magazine. You could target the Rolex demographic, or you know what I mean? Like Rolex could target in men's fitness and they can target that demographic and stuff like that. Why can't we target from a real estate perspective the people who are most likely to be able to buy that property? And I'm not saying that's the only people who are going to see it. Like the other people are going to be on Zillow and they're all going to be on these other, they have agents and everything like that. So they'll be able to see and buy the property. We're not stopping anybody from buying the property. All we're trying to do is advertise to the correct demographic and put our face in front of those people. So I think that's where this law has gone a little bit too far. But basically they started restricting anything and everything under the sun. So you can no longer target by age. You can't, which I don't think you should be able to do, but we used to have ads, 2 ads for every single property. And they would cater towards different things on the property that would target each gender. So like we would talk about, if it's a garage and how great the garage is, and this is probably sexist and everything like that. This was 10 years ago, but we would talk about how great the garage is and how great the backyard was and entertaining on the grill. And we'd show a picture of a guy in the backyard grilling in that backyard. And we would do an ad to that and be like, what, don't you want this backyard for the upcoming summer, like grilling months? And then it would be completely different for the female demographic that we were targeting to, and it would be like talking about the living room space and the living space and being able to watch your kids while the kitchen's right here and the open floor plan and stuff like that. So it was just different features on the property, same property, and we're targeting both genders, but we were just trying to show different things of appealing to them, which would happen when we walk them through the open house anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
the guy might be more interested in the master bedroom and what that looks like, while the female would be more interested in the living space and everything like that. Like it's
Yeah.
just kind of like the natural evolution of how we think in the psyche. So you used to be able to go by gender, you used to be able to go by location, you used to be able to go drop a pin and put a mile radius around it. And we used to have this famous thing called digital door knocking that we pushed
Yeah,
for Harcourts.
yeah, that's right.
Gone. Yep. So
It's
that's
gone.
gone as well. And
So what can you do now? Who are we targeting? So because this all leads back into what data are we collecting and how precious the data is. Because I want to get there. I want to get to the specifics of that here shortly. But what can we do?
So you can target any list you upload.
Yeah.
So know
Okay,
that.
so this is my point. Talk to me about the list. Like, what do I need to get to be effective?
Let's pause on the list real quick. So,
Okay.
what you can target through Facebook sides is any list you upload, and then from there, you could still use their targeting platform to target any age group, any gender, and anybody from a city level and above. So that means city, county, state. So that's how I would look at it from now on. So if you're trying to target an entire city, like technically Gig Harbor is a city that I live in. And so Gig Harbor is actually a small city. So I'm pretty safe in this standpoint because I could reach all, 10,000 people who live in here pretty easily. But if I was trying to target Seattle, I'm pretty screwed.
But does that mean, are they doing it for larger revenue then? Because are we going to have to spend more money to reach all of those people within that demographic then, or no?
You're still setting the budgets, and I still think companies are going to set their budgets. So I don't know if it's necessarily a revenue standpoint. I don't think it's a revenue standpoint. I think it's just they were getting hammered by Congress so hard when they were talking about the targeting and the political ads, and somehow housing, politics, housing, and then banking, like finance, like ads, like loans and stuff like that.
Because
those all get lumped together.
I don't see how it's really that much different not being able to target via zip code or whatever it is now. Like I know you can't drop a pin or whatever it is, but that said, you just go, you just avoid the cities that you don't want to do, right?
But imagine you're in San Diego. And you're trying to target San Diego. That's such a big city. It's massive.
That is a solid. It's like LA. Like there are. Exactly. You could say there's different parts of it, but LA is like
If you're doing San Diego, you're reaching all the way from like Escondido all the way down, which is crazy. Honestly, granted Escondido is its own city, but there are parts of San Diego City that are border to Escondido that are that high up, and it's crazy. Like you'd be reaching so many people. You'd be reaching millions of people. Like it doesn't make any sense.
So tell me this. So again, that's if you're just cold targeting. That's cold targeting.
That's Facebook's. I would say Facebook demographic targeting.
Now, let me ask you a serious question. Like, I don't think we would ever put any money behind just that targeting.
We're a little bit different. If we did get enough money back and everything like that, like we could target the entire nation theoretically, and we could still go by job title at that point, and we could type in job title of real estate agent. So that's our kind of filter on how we would do it that way. But people who buy a house, they have 5 million different job titles. Like they could be anything under the sun. So you can't target that way, and you can't even target by people who are likely to buy a house or anything like that. Like it's.
Do you know how funny it is? Is that people are probably listening to this going, "Oh, that's crap. That's really bad. You can't do that anymore." If you've ever sent out a flyer to a neighborhood, you've done the exact same thing.
100%. Because especially the EDM, every door direct mailer, the EDDM or whatever, like that literally just goes to an entire postal route, which is crazy. I ran one of those one time and I was like, oh, I was like, wait, we're getting this apartment and we're getting this $5 million listings at the same time. Like, what is going on? Like we have to, that's the same route. Like we can't decipher between two different things. It just made no sense to us.
So let's talk about the list then, because that's where we really want to lean into. What we're trying to point out is that the nature of being able to target people and all of that cold targeting is going away. And what we've always spoken about is these lists, these audiences.
Yes.
Okay, that you need at least 1,000 people on in order to get there. Now, Chris, in order to get to that 1,000 quickly, like we need to be getting some data from different places, or when we are getting the data, the best place to do it is at open houses. The best place to do it is, it's funny, dialing for dollars is what like a lot of people do. Okay, I'd say it's dialing for data. Okay, like I think that's cool, because I know that a lot of our agents that do like the expired listing prospecting and all of that type of stuff, a lot of them actually say that they get a lot more data than they do like get appointments that they can build on for later times. Like for example, that one with Nellie Gale, that Rachel was doing, I think that came from a door knock that she did. Okay. But then there's a lot of other ones that I know a few people, like I'm dealing with one with Brian at the moment in Yorba Linda, where he's 86 groups of people through, and she came from a cold call that took him 2 years of following up. Like that becomes a client eventually. Okay. So let's say that you're at an open house. Okay, let's say that you're taking down people's information, okay, because again, guys, just to reiterate this, if you haven't heard it before, you can put it in the listing agreement that the seller requires anybody that enters the property in order to give name, phone number, email address, so that therefore they can be followed up for security reasons. So if you need a reason in order to get their information, then I'd be doing that. I don't need a reason. I'd stand there and say, sorry, guys, the point of entry is to actually give me your information. But like, what would be the category? So let's say I had just a name and a phone number. Let's say I had a name and an email address. Let's say I had a name, phone number, and email address. Like, what are the percentage chances that we are able to get in front of that person, or what is the diminishing percentage chance if I don't have all of the information?
Yeah. So if you have 3 out of those 4, first name, last name, email address, phone number, and the good part is you can match the city and state to where you're at. And so usually you fill that out in the Excel spreadsheet as well. So if you're in California, put in California. If you're in San Diego, San Diego. So it's perfect from that standpoint. Most people are looking at open houses in the same area that they live in. That's the perfect part that you could just kind of autofill that situation in there. From a phone number perspective, if you only have phone number, a lot of people only have one phone number. So the phone number, I would say, is kind of the key, because most people are running their phone number to use Facebook mobile app. And so how Facebook kind of targets them is they find their phone number. They already have their phone number. Perfect. We're good to go on that standpoint. For an email address, most people have multiple email addresses. They have their spam email address and they have a regular one. So that email address actually has to line up with what email they log into for Facebook standpoint.
Got it.
So I would say the phone number is your first and foremost. If you can get only the phone number, that's great. But if you can get both, it's even better. So a phone number would have a higher strike rate, in my opinion. And I have no data to back this up, but in my opinion, from what I've seen, I would say you get a match, 60, 70% of the time from that standpoint. If you have phone number and email, that starts to go up considerably. You're talking about 80 to 90% strike rate at that point, because it's one or the other. It'll match them to one or the other. If you have neither one of those and you just have the first name, last name, and you have a city or state, it's very sporadic depending on how common their name is and stuff like that. You might get the wrong people at that point. So I would say get as much data as you can. And I know this is tough to do in open houses, but if there are multiple adults that are coming through, it's great to grab all of them. Or you go and you look that up through title afterwards or something like that based on who's there. And that's kind of where we get.
And that's services that you can actually render. So let's say I get a list of 100 people that come through an open house over a 3 or 4 week span that have got a property on the marketplace, and I get. Well, so you and Danielle would be different though, wouldn't it? Because you guys, right. Okay. So that's one of the things we've got to take into consideration. At cheaper price points, maybe when people are buying their first or second homes, maybe that's what you've got to consider, that they're not married. So there's plenty of things you've got to consider.
Yeah. So if you can get multiple people to fill out in that standpoint, again, that's just like, I would focus on trying to get one person per group in the beginning. And then once you get really seasoned at it, get multiple people. And the reason why you get multiple people is that doubles your audience size. So if you had 86 people go through your open house, now you're talking about 150 people that you got the data from at that point. And now all of a sudden your lists start to build very rapidly because you want to be in front of both those people anyways.
So question for you as I think about it. So I just remember with the script that I used to use, because it was really common in Australia when I was at an open house, in order to get name, first name, last name, phone number, and I never really got an email address. I'd get property address.
Yeah,
and it was just because that is one of the requirements, so that we know who they are and whatever it is. But is that helpful data out in not? I know it's really helpful data for the realtor, but is that helpful data in the targeting element of the meta targeting?
Yeah, because theoretically what you could do, instead of just auto-populating San Diego all the way down, you could start getting specific of like, they live in Escondido or they live in Yorba Linda and stuff like that. So you could start putting all that stuff in there. And so then it becomes way more specific at that point for Facebook's targeting standpoint. I would say if that's what you're comfortable with, that also gives you a lot more data information for, are they renting and they're buying? Because now you can, are they renting and they selling? Like what are they looking at right now?
Yeah, because that's one of the things that I'd always say, because sometimes people weren't comfortable giving an address. And certainly here, when I was doing the open houses, when we first started auctions here with the agents, they weren't very comfortable giving an address at all. Like, don't get me wrong, name and phone number, I've never had a challenge with that, like ever, right?
But getting an address one time.
So all I would usually say then, I change it up to saying, hey, are you local or are you coming from out of the area? Okay. And when they say, oh, out of the area, whereabouts are you from?
Yeah.
It's just a really easy conversation. But then the part of this that I'm sort of like just like I'm mulling over in my own mind is the effectiveness of all that data that then you have, that then not only are you doing your own nurture programs and your own platforms and everything like that, putting it into, how do you put it into an effective list, Chris? Like, do you put it in, so say you've got a CRM, do you then download just a CSV file, like, or if you're just running an Excel, like what format does it need to be in order to be uploaded as an audience into the Meta, in the Meta platform?
Yeah, so Meta has a template that you can go when you first start to go advertise, and you go on the left side, it'll say audiences, and when you click on audiences, it'll say custom audience. You can click on that. From their standpoint, there is a download the template. And so you can have that template, and it basically shows the format that everything should be in. So from the phone numbers should be in a certain format to it has all the titles of everything. That's usually what I use to just copy and paste from my list on there. So I download a CSV from my CRM, and then I basically just copy and paste from each field into the respective fields that on Facebook's template. And so that's usually the best way that I do it and the easiest way that I do it. Their phone number format is the only one that I would focus on. So that's the only one that's really gets hyper specific, because the phone number one, you need to have the country code in there as well. So it needs to have like a 1 before it. And it just needs to be in one of their approved formats. And inside their template, they have all the different approved formats where it's, 1-253- blah, 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 or it's +1, and then it's no dashes in it. So just make sure that that looks all correct. And then when you upload it, Facebook then will be able to target those a lot better. So sometimes it does take a little bit of cleanup. Again, that's where you could offshore that or something like that to clean all that up and put all that together. But I would say for first party data, that's the easiest way to do it. From a third party data, which I think we should focus on too, the difference between first party data is the data that you can physically gather yourself.
Yep.
Exactly. Third party data would be something that you go out through title or something else, and you grab that information
and you
from
get that
somewhere
information.
else. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where you would just have those two different things of where you're pulling those from. Theoretically, if you pass over that template file to title, they could plop that in there for you as well. So you could have that template directly to title and then just have them put that in there. At least I've had a good success of just doing it through them and saying, hey, this is how I need the data formatted. And then they'll pull it at that point.
I've got my final point, my question on all of this is that I know that we speak about the Meta suite of things and advertising through there because I think they've just really mastered the use of it. Obviously, it's getting a lot more restrictive and everything along those lines.
Yeah.
There's YouTube, obviously. There's Google as well.
Yeah, those are the same.
YouTube, Google, but then there's also LinkedIn.
Yes.
I don't think TikTok is something that we should be talking about here just yet. It's just not the right audience. Maybe not. I don't know.
I would say the TikTok from their advertising algorithm is really good. So and they don't have the parameters, the restrictions because they don't really care yet. So just know that if you're trying to,
that's likely going to change. That's likely going to change because
the new law just got put in place where if they don't sell or whatever like that within the next, I think it's like 180 days or something, then TikTok has to be
but then they're expanding and everything. But I just heard something funny today that I just want to mention is that I thought it was really, really relevant. It was on the Scott Galloway podcast, the Prof G podcast, Markets. He's like, the guy who does the hosting for Scott goes, he's like, I find it really ironic that China is suing the US for free speech.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah, that's good. I also, I go back and forth because we're doing I don't know. Let's not get on that tangent. But when you upload these lists, from that standpoint, when you're uploading them into Meta specifically, they are marked as customer lists. So just know that there's a bunch of different lists, types of audiences in there. So you're looking for a customer audience, and this is kind of like skirting the lines a little bit because they're technically not a customer of yours in the past. But you might have gotten advice or you might have door knocked or something like that. Like, so it is a little hard. They're technically not a customer of yours. So, just know that might change in the future as well. But right now you can just upload them as a customer list and you can start targeting them.
Right. Right. Well, I think that this sheds a little bit of light. I think it's either more it's either confused you more. Okay. Which again, if it has, then this might not be your field. But if you really want to understand the progression of where things are going, I don't have a great understanding of it. Chris is here in our company in order to understand it a little bit more, but I do have a genuine curiosity around it, which allows me to ask the questions I do of you, mate, because I know that this is the way that things are going, or that it's not the way that things are going. They're already there. It's the way it's the way they've been. It's the way that we're going to focus on things. They are even saying that. This morning I was listening to something as well that they said that, you know how like going into the newspaper used to be a medium that obviously was very expensive to do so because it was the way to market and target most people. They're saying that the median of digital marketing now is actually getting to that point of escalation. 1% of all global GDP, it's been the same way for 40 years, regardless of where it is, 1% of global GDP goes to marketing and advertising.
The crazy, and this shows how crazy it's gotten. So I used to be able to get Facebook lead at like $4, and we're raving about $50 right now. I'm like, oh, $50, like that's great. Now some of that's inflation and all that stuff like that, but yeah, 10, 15 years ago, I used to be able to get them like dollars, I would just get them hand over fist all the time, anytime I wanted to. Now it's pulling teeth just to get $50 because of just the escalation and the amount of people and everything like that. The amount of advertisers that are advertising on those platforms that you have to compete with. Our ads are showing next to, Coca-Cola or, whatever, the Gap or anything like that to these people as well. And so we're having to compete with all these things. We didn't have to used to do any of that. So it's definitely changed and dramatically became the norm. And so I think that's something that we all need to kind of lean into. The last time someone picked up a newspaper is, forever ago.
Well, let me put it to you this way: for anybody that thinks about paying for digital leads online with Zillow or Realtor.com or whatever, I guarantee that your cost per lead, one, isn't as effective as what you probably could get yourself if you actually got really good data, and two, that cost per lead is astronomically more expensive than what the leads that you probably could generate yourself throughout this. Like when I say astronomically, I'm going to go as far as to say 1,000 times more.
Yeah, and because you got to factor in your time, and if these could just run in the background, the sweat equity of you going door knocking, yes, while that is great, like there are benefits into that sometimes, like we saw Daily Gale Road and everything like that. There are benefits of door knocking still, but the time that you're going out there, and if you spend 6, 7, 8 hours out there, that was the number one thing that stopped me from door knocking. Was being able to run ads. I was like, I don't like door knocking. I just didn't like it. I was like,
but also, I've even thought about it, Chris. I've even thought about it. Even the stuff that we're doing with Chad, I don't think I would make a cold call anymore without actually layering a neighborhood. Do you know what I mean? I just layering some of the people in the tug. Exactly right. But it's not so much strike rates. It's also the nature of the conversation that you're having with somebody to be be 1% more educated on what I'm calling them about than what they were previously. Yep. That goes such a million miles.
The last audience that I want to mention as well that we haven't mentioned is a retargeting standpoint as well. So that is the final audience from this data perspective. And I would say, from a retargeting perspective, if I send anybody an email and they click to my website, if I'm Chad and then I'm calling them and I'm saying, hey, thanks for a quick call. Here's more information. Feel free to click this link for more information. It goes over to your website. I would then retarget every single person who went to your website, because at that point, they're then getting for more information. You already had a phone call for them. And then like you talked about, you're layering on an ad afterwards. You probably already layered an ad beforehand somehow with the data that you're about to call. And so now at that point, you're getting 4 touch points for what used to be 1 touch point on them, which I think is tremendous. So I would retarget anybody who goes to your website, and I would force people to go to your website to get more information. That's anytime I get off a phone call or anytime, links in your signature or anything like that, anytime someone clicks onto my website, I want to make sure that I'm also retargeting them. That is in Meta's suite as well. So and retargeting is not new. I think everybody probably, if they're listening to this, they probably know this.
But I honestly think that it's incredibly powerful. I can't believe, and I don't know how it all works, but if Callista goes on and clicks on something on her computer, it comes up in my social feeds and everything like that as well. It's really, I think it's for her to have a conversation with me about, oh, hey, I really like this, or hey, have you thought about this? And that because it's clearly she's been watching it, but then it retargets me.
I know.
Well, now I'm thinking about it. Yeah.
We're getting your ads because me and you were talking about 8 sleep, and then and then now it's an easier pitch for me to tell her that we need to buy an 8 sleep.
Did you see they've got a new one now? They've got a new one now.
Yeah, exactly. But so when I go to have a conversation with her, now it's easier for me because we're on the same IP address. So she's probably already getting 8 sleep ads, and now it's an easier pitch for me to hey, we got to spend a couple grand on an 8 sleep mattress, and so it's just easier at that point. The last thing, man, I was going to say something. From a database perspective and the targeting through retargeting, the cool thing is you could retarget now for people who don't even go to your website. So just know that is an option as well. So one of the positive benefits of the Facebook and the Meta algorithm change and the demographic change is you could actually just target people who went to your Facebook page. You could target people who watched a video of yours in the past. So like we talked about on the previous episode, we talked about shorts and everything like that. If they watched 25%, 50%, 75%, 90%, 100%, you could actually target those people. So they actually never clicked on anything. They never went to anything. But if you want to deliver them a follow-up subsequent ad to watching 90% of this video because they got more educated or something like that, now you can actually deliver and you can retarget them at that point. So that is another piece of data and another piece of audience that you can actually go after through Facebook ads as well. That has nothing to do with them going to your website, call, anything like that. So it's just people who have watched a video of yours or they've clicked on an ad, but they actually never filled anything out. You can retarget all those different things. So don't look at retargeting as just people who have gone to your website like you might have in the past. Look at retargeting as people who have done any interaction with your page or your Facebook page, because that is your new website at this point.
Well, team, a lot of useful information. Hopefully you can you put it to some good use, because again, it's not where things are going, it's where they are.
Yeah, it's where they've been. It's where they've been.
It. Thanks, Christopher.
See ya.
So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.